The alien world of Leora was peaceful at night, but tonight something felt wrong. A cold wind moved through the village, carrying fear with it. When the first sunlight touched the ground, 2 alien mothers screamed. Their little daughters were gone. Their beds were empty, the doors were open, and small footprints led toward the dark forest at the edge of the village. Everyone knew that forest was death for their species. Any alien who stepped inside died within seconds. The forest was alive, dangerous, and hungry. Only one species could enter and survive inside. Only humans. The village elders gathered quickly. Shaking with fear, they knew if the girls were not found within hours, they would never be found again. The forest liked to keep its victims forever. The aliens argued, cried, and begged the sky for help. But there was only one answer. They had to call the humans stationed in Outpost Terra 7, a small human base 5 miles away. Humans were strange to them, but they trusted humans more than they trusted the forest. A human soldier named Mark received the emergency signal. He had helped aliens before, but this was different. The message said 2 little girls were taken by the forest. Mark did not wait for orders. He grabbed his gear, his scanner, his light armor, and ran out of the base. His team offered to join him, but he refused. He knew the forest was too small for groups, and noise attracted danger. He would go alone. When Mark reached the alien village, he saw the parents crying on the ground, holding each other. They rushed to him, grabbing his arms, begging him to save their daughters. Mark knelt down and promised he would bring the girls back. His calm voice gave them hope, something they desperately needed to hear. The elders pointed at the forest, warning Mark that strange sounds had been coming from inside since dawn. Sounds like something moving, waiting. Mark walked toward the forest slowly, studying the trees. The forest looked normal from the outside, tall, dark trees with thick leaves. But his scanner showed something impossible. The trees were moving, even though there was no wind. Their roots shifted under the soil, like they were breathing. Mark took a deep breath and stepped forward. The moment his foot touched the ground, near the first tree, he heard something terrifying. A whisper, soft and chilling, calling his name. Mark. The voice came from deep inside the forest, but no human was inside. The aliens behind him began shaking and backing away. They warned him not to answer, not to listen. The forest played tricks on minds. That was what killed their people. But Mark kept walking. He knew he had no choice. If the girls were alive, they were scared, cold, and alone. He pushed past the first line of trees, and immediately the world changed around him. The forest closed behind him like a living wall, sealing the entrance. Mark hit the tree with his arm, trying to test if he could use force to break out. But the tree did not move. It felt like metal, cold and solid. He was trapped inside. The air became heavy, almost too thick to breathe. The ground pulsed under his boots. Like a giant heart beating beneath the soil, Mark turned on his helmet light. But the light barely reached 5 steps ahead. The darkness swallowed everything. He heard a branch snap behind him. He turned fast, gun ready, but nothing was there. Then he heard soft footsteps, small ones like a child running. His heart stopped. He whispered, "Girls, is that you?" No answer, only another whisper. But this time it was not calling his name, it was crying. A little girl's cry echoed between the trees, weak and scared. "Help!" The small voice cried. Mark ran toward the sound, branches pulling at his clothes. The forest seemed alive, trying to slow him down. He reached a clearing and froze. One of the girl's small toys was hanging from a branch, swinging like someone placed it there on purpose. The toy was glowing faintly, something it had never done before. Mark touched it and felt warmth, like the girl had held it not long ago. He whispered to himself, "They are alive. I'm close." But then the forest changed again. A loud growl shook the ground. Mark could feel vibrations under his feet. Something big was moving between the trees. Not human, not alien, something older. A low rumble echoed from the shadows, followed by a chilling sound, 2 screams. They belonged to the little girls, but the screams came from different directions, left and right. The forest was playing with him, trying to make him panic. Trying to break him, Mark raised his weapon. Breathing slowly, he realized he was not hunting the forest. The forest was hunting him, and the girls were running out of time. The darkness around him suddenly shifted, and glowing eyes appeared between the trees, watching him without blinking. He took one careful step back, knowing that whatever those eyes belonged to was not friendly. The girls screamed again, louder. This time, and Mark knew he had to move now, or die inside this living nightmare. The forest whispered his name again as the glowing eyes moved closer. And Mark stepped into the darkness, ready to face whatever was hiding inside. For the sake of the missing girls, Mark stood still for a moment as the glowing eyes stared at him from the dark trees. The forest around him felt alive, breathing slowly. Like a massive creature watching his every move, the ground under his boots pulsed again, reminding him that he was standing on something ancient and dangerous. He tightened his grip on his scanner and whispered, "I'm not leaving without the girls." The glowing eyes blinked once and vanished. Mark moved forward, pushing aside branches that felt more like claws than leaves. Every step made the forest react. Roots shifted under his feet as if trying to trip him. Strange low whistles echoed from deep within the darkness, like the forest was talking to itself, warning something else that Mark was coming. He tried not to listen, but the sounds dug into his mind, making his heartbeat race. He scanned the area again, and strange red symbols appeared on the ground, glowing softly in the soil. They formed a circle around him. Almost like a trap, Mark bent down to look closer. The symbols were not from the alien species who lost their daughters. They belonged to something older, something not recorded in any human database. The symbols changed shape as he watched. Slowly shifting like living forms, Mark stepped back, quickly realizing this place was not just a forest, it was a creature's territory, and he had already crossed the line. A cold whisper moved past his ear, brushing his skin like icy breath. "Turn back. Human." Mark spun around, gun ready, but there was no one there. Only shadows moving between the trees like thin figures. He backed away slowly, trying to calm his nerves. Panic could kill him faster than any beast here. He reminded himself that two little girls were somewhere inside this nightmare, scared and waiting for help. He had no right to be afraid, not when they were fighting to stay alive. A soft sound broke the silence. A tiny voice, it sounded like humming, a child's tune. Mark followed the sound, moving deeper into the forest. The darkness grew thicker, wrapping around him like a giant blanket. His light flickered once, twice, then stabilized. He whispered to himself, "Come on, stay with me." Talking to the light like it could hear him, the humming grew louder. And he finally saw a small glowing object hanging from a crooked branch. It was a bracelet made from tiny stones, and Mark remembered the alien mother showing him the same bracelet earlier, saying her daughter never removed it. The bracelet glowed softly, but Mark knew it did not glow before. Something inside the forest was changing the girls and everything they touched. He reached out slowly, but before he could grab it, the forest moved. The branch pulled back like a hand snatching something away. The bracelet vanished into the shadows. The humming stopped, and the forest became silent as a tomb. Mark felt cold sweat on the back of his neck. Something or someone was watching him closely, playing with him like he was a toy. He walked ahead, stepping carefully. His scanner beeped suddenly, showing movement on all sides, but the shapes on the screen were strange. They looked like creatures crawling on the ground, tall shadows walking between trees, and floating forms that had no legs. Mark swallowed hard. He whispered, "This forest is full of life, but not the kind I want to meet." Then he heard a faint cry, a real one, not a trick. It was soft, frightened, and very close. Mark ran toward the sound, pushing through thick vines that wrapped around his legs like snakes. After a few steps, he saw a small figure lying under a glowing root. It was the younger girl, her tiny body shaking lightly. Her skin looked pale, almost transparent. Mark rushed forward and knelt beside her, gently touching her face. Her eyes opened weakly, and she whispered, It wants my sister." Before losing consciousness again, Mark looked around quickly. He had to move her before the forest reacted. He lifted her gently into his arms. Her small hands felt ice cold, like the forest drained her warmth. As he stood up, the forest trembled. The trees groaned, roots twisted, and a deep growl echoed from the earth itself. The forest was angry. It knew he had found one of the girls. Mark started running, breathing hard as branches whipped his face and roots tried to pull his feet. The forest wanted to keep the child, and it wanted to punish the intruder. A shadow passed overhead, large and fast. Mark ducked, protecting the little girl. The shadow landed somewhere behind him, shaking the ground. Mark did not dare look back. He just kept running, whispering, "Hold on, little one, I've got you." As he reached a clearing, he looked behind for a split second. His blood turned cold. A massive shape stood between the trees, taller than any human, darker than the night. Its eyes glowed bright blue, filled with ancient anger. Mark realized this was not just a creature. It was the guardian of the forest, the thing that took the girls, and now it knew Mark had one of them. The creature took one slow step forward, cracking the ground with its weight. Mark knew he had only minutes before it caught him, maybe seconds. And somewhere deeper inside the forest, the older girl screamed again, her voice shaking with pure terror. The forest roared back, and the creature's glowing eyes locked onto Mark as the chase began. Mark held the younger girl tightly against his chest as the forest shook with the creature's roar. He could feel its rage vibrating through the soil, like the ground itself wanted to rise and swallow him whole. The little girl breathed weakly, her tiny fingers clutching his armor with the last bit of strength she had left. Mark whispered, "Stay with me. I'll save you and your sister," even though he wasn't sure how. Not with this monster behind him. Branches snapped loudly as the creature moved closer. It was slow but powerful, each step sounding like a falling tree. Mark ducked under thick roots and jumped over fallen logs. But the forest was closing the path in front of him. Trees shifted, roots curled upward like traps, and the air turned colder with every second. The forest was helping the creature, guiding it toward Mark like a predator following its prey. Mark felt the truth sink in. He was not fighting a beast. He was fighting an entire living world. He reached a narrow path between two twisted trees, but the ground under his foot collapsed suddenly, sending him sliding down into a hidden tunnel. He managed to twist his body to protect the girl, rolling onto his side at the bottom. The fall knocked the air out of his lungs, but he held the girl tight, making sure she wasn't hurt. The tunnel was dark and damp, filled with the smell of old stone and something rotten. Mark stood slowly, turning on his light. The walls were covered in strange carvings, symbols similar to the glowing ones he had seen above ground, but these looked older, more detailed, almost like warnings. He walked further into the tunnel, hoping it led to the older girl. His scanner flickered with weak life signals, scattered but real. He followed the strongest signal, whispering softly to the unconscious girl in his arms, "Your sister is close. I'll find her, I promise." The tunnel opened into a huge chamber, and Mark stopped, feeling his skin crawl. The floor was filled with old bones, long dead creatures, alien and unrecognizable. Some looked tiny like the girls, others huge with twisted spines and extra limbs. The forest had been feeding for centuries. A low hum filled the chamber, vibrating the air. Mark's light flickered, then stabilized again. In the center of the room stood a crystal cage, glowing dim blue. Inside it was the older girl, her body curled, shaking with fear. She looked up slowly when she saw Mark and whispered something he couldn't understand. Her voice cracked, like she had been crying for hours. Mark stepped forward, but the ground shook violently, warning him that he was trespassing. He ignored it, placing the younger girl gently on a safe patch of ground, then rushed to the crystal cage. He touched it, and the cage burned his fingers. Instantly, he pulled back with a hiss of pain. The cage was alive, feeding off the girl's fear, trapping her inside like a parasite. Then Mark heard the creature again, but this time it wasn't roaring. It was speaking inside his mind, a deep voice echoing through his skull. Human. Leave, she belongs to the forest. Your kind cannot take what is chosen. Mark clenched his fists, fighting the overwhelming pressure in his head. He shouted into the darkness. She's just a child. Let her go. The chamber trembled, dust falling from the ceiling like snow. The voice spoke again, colder than before. Your courage is useless here. The forest has waited many lifetimes. These children carry the right energy. They stay. Mark's breathing grew heavy, but he forced his fear down. He scanned the cage again, searching for a weakness. The crystal reacted, glowing brighter, pulsing faster. It was tied to the creature somehow. Mark stepped back and grabbed one of the energy devices from his belt. He set it to low charge, hoping it wouldn't hurt the girl, and fired it at the base of the cage. The crystal screamed, a sound like breaking glass mixed with a child's cry. The energy bounced off, hitting the wall and leaving a smoking hole. The cage remained untouched. The creature's shadow appeared at the chamber entrance, its giant horns scraping the ceiling. Its eyes glowed fiercely, filled with hatred and something older memory. It stepped forward, and Mark felt the ground sink slightly under its weight. The creature had metal bones under its skin, glowing veins of blue energy, claws sharp enough to cut stone. Its voice filled the room without sound, echoing directly in Mark's mind. Human. You cannot win. Your body is weak. Your life is short. Your hope is meaningless. Mark stood still, fear wrapping around him like cold hands. But he didn't back away. He positioned himself between the creature and the girls, raising his weapon. His voice was steady when he said, "If you want them, you'll have to go through me." The girl inside the crystal cage started crying louder, small fists hitting the inside of the cage. The creature paused, confused, almost surprised by Mark's refusal to run. Mark pointed the gun at the creature, but deep inside he knew it wouldn't be enough. He was facing something ancient, something built to destroy worlds, not fight humans. The creature stepped closer, its huge claws inches from Mark. The chamber went silent. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. The creature leaned forward, its voice trembling with old rage and curiosity. Why do you protect them? Human. You owe them nothing. Mark stared into its glowing eyes and whispered, "Because they're children. And I'm human." The creature froze, the forest around them trembling lightly, as if those words meant something it had long forgotten. The silence grew heavier, and then, without warning, the creature vanished into the shadows, taking the earth-shaking growl with it. Mark exhaled slowly, realizing the battle had only just begun, and the forest would not let him leave alive so easily. The girl's fates hung in the balance, and the ancient guardian was far from finished with him. The chamber grew silent after Mark spoke. His words floated in the air like fire in cold water. "Because they're children. And I'm human," he had said, and somehow the creature had stopped, not attacking, not roaring, just watching. For a moment, everything held its breath, even the forest. Then the shadows pulled back, and the creature vanished into the walls like smoke. Mark didn't relax. He knew the silence was just a trick. A moment of calm before the storm. The older girl was still trapped, her face full of fear behind the glowing crystal cage. Mark turned to the younger one, still lying weakly on the ground, breathing shallow but alive. He looked between the two girls and whispered, "I need you both safe. No matter what." He placed the younger girl gently in a corner of the chamber, away from the bones and strange symbols, and walked back toward the crystal cage. He pressed both hands against the surface, ignoring the sharp heat burning through his gloves. "Come on. Show me your weakness," he muttered. His scanner beeped softly. The energy inside the cage came from the forest itself. It was alive, it was feeding on fear. Mark turned off his scanner and closed his eyes. Breathing deeply, he focused on Every moment of silence, every change in the air, and then he noticed something strange. When he stepped closer with calm thoughts, the crystal dimmed slightly. When he stepped with anger, it glowed brighter. The cage fed on emotion, not just fear. It was testing him too, seeing if he would break. But Mark didn't give in. He sat down in front of the cage, folded his legs, and closed his eyes. He started to speak softly to the girl inside, not to calm her, but to calm himself. "My name is Mark," he whispered. "I'm a human soldier. I've been trained for war, trained for pain, trained for fear, but I never trained for this. For saving children from a living forest." He opened his eyes slowly. "Yet here I am, and I won't leave without you." The girl inside blinked, confused but watching. The crystal light began to flicker, weaker than before. Mark reached forward again, his hand glowing with energy from the scanner. He pushed it slowly toward the center of the cage, whispering, "You're not just a cage. You're a choice." And the crystal cracked, just a little, but enough. A small sound echoed through the chamber, like glass being tapped from the inside. The forest reacted immediately, screaming with a deep groan. The walls shook, roots burst from the ground, and green glowing vines lashed toward Mark. He jumped back, shielding the girl, firing his stun blasts into the roots. Each blast bought him seconds, but the vines were endless. They wrapped around his legs, pulling him backward. He screamed, twisting, falling. But before they could drag him into the floor, he stabbed a pulse grenade into the soil. The explosion pushed the vines away, not killing them, but buying him time. He limped back to the cage, holding a long knife now. His gun was nearly empty, and his energy cells were low. "Let's try this the hard way then," he said, and stabbed the base of the crystal. The crystal screamed again, and this time it cracked deeper. A line ran across the front like lightning frozen in glass. Inside, the girl covered her ears. Shaking in fear, the creature's voice returned inside Mark's head, but it was different now. It didn't roar, it pleaded. "Stop, you'll destroy the balance. You don't understand." Mark gritted his teeth and shouted back, "You don't understand humans. We don't run. We protect." He stabbed again, then again, each hit cracking the cage further. The chamber shook so hard that pieces of ceiling began to fall. Mark shielded the girl, then stabbed the crystal one last time with all his strength. The crystal shattered, not with a loud explosion, but a soft sigh. Like it had simply given up. The girl fell into Mark's arms, coughing, shaking, alive. Mark held her tight, whispering, "I've got you. I've got both of you." But before he could stand, the chamber changed. All the lights in the crystal faded. The symbols on the wall started glowing red, and a hole opened in the back wall. From that hole came a noise, deep, ancient, and angry. The true form of the creature was waking, not just its shadow, not just its voice. Mark picked up both girls, one in each arm, and ran. The forest screamed louder than ever before. Trees twisting, roots breaking stone, walls closing behind him. The path he had come through was gone, swallowed by the forest, but ahead, the new tunnel led somewhere, maybe out, maybe deeper into danger. Mark didn't care. All that mattered now was that both girls were alive. He ran with everything he had, while behind him, the full body of the creature began to rise, taller than buildings, covered in bark and bone, roaring with the voice of an entire world, and it was coming for him. Mark ran through the narrow tunnel, both girls in his arms. One of them cried softly. The other just clung to him tightly. Too weak to speak, behind him, the entire forest was roaring, like an angry beast waking from centuries of sleep. The walls cracked, roots chased him like snakes. The air itself was screaming, but Mark didn't stop, not even once. His legs burned. His breath came in short gasps, but he kept going. Each step was heavier than the last, as if the forest was trying to pull him down like quicksand. The tunnel curved sharply, leading into a wide cave with an opening above. A faint light poured through just enough to see that this place was different. The floor was covered in smooth black stone. No roots, no trees, just silence. Mark gently set the girls down in the center of the cave, placing his jacket over them. Then he looked around. Gun raised, heart pounding. This isn't over. He whispered, and he was right. A shadow dropped down from above, landing with a heavy thud. The guardian of the forest had arrived. Its full body now visible, taller than 3 men. Its bark-like skin cracked with light, its arms long with claws like spears, and its glowing eyes locked on Mark. Mark stood between the girls and the beast, breathing hard. His body ached, and he had almost nothing left to fight with. But still he didn't move. He whispered without fear, "You want them? You'll have to kill me." The creature didn't speak this time. It just stared at him for a long moment. Then a voice echoed directly into Mark's mind, softer than before, but colder. "You are strange, human. You feel pain. You know death, and still you choose to stay." Mark nodded. "That's what we do. We protect those who can't protect themselves." The creature stepped closer, shaking the cave. "You don't understand. They are not just children. They carry a spark, a light that feeds the balance. Without it, this forest dies. I was created to guard that light." Mark didn't flinch. "You've had your time. You took others before them, didn't you? Hundreds, maybe thousands. But not anymore." The guardian looked at the girls, its glowing chest pulsing with strange energy. "You're willing to trade your life for theirs?" it asked. "One life for 2 sparks?" Mark took a deep breath. "Yes, take me. Let them live, let them go. And I'll stay. Forever, if I have to." The cave shook slightly. Not with anger this time, but confusion. The guardian tilted its head, as if trying to understand something impossible. "No creature has offered this before. Not even those who created me." Mark walked forward, lowering his weapon, arms open. "That's the difference. We're human. We don't always act by logic. We act from the heart." The guardian stopped just inches away from him, towering like a mountain. Then it raised one clawed finger and touched Mark's forehead gently. A sharp burning sensation shot through his body, and a mark appeared on his skin, a glowing red symbol that pulsed with light. The girls gasped as they watched. The symbol looked ancient, powerful, and permanent. The guardian spoke once more, its voice softer than ever before. "You are marked. Now you belong to the forest. You will not age. You will not leave." "But they are free." Mark fell to his knees as the pain passed, but he smiled through the sweat and tears. He turned to the girls and whispered, "Go. You're safe now. Go home." But the older girl didn't move. She crawled toward him, crying, "No. We can't leave you." The younger one held her sister's hand and looked at Mark with big, watery eyes. "You saved us. You're like our father now." The cave light grew brighter, and a path opened in the rock, leading to the surface. The girls looked at it, then back at Mark. He shook his head, smiling gently. "It's okay. I'll be fine. I'll watch over the forest now." The guardian stepped aside, allowing the girls to pass. Mark stood slowly, the glowing symbol on his arm now pulsing with the same rhythm as the forest itself. He was changing, becoming something else. Something part human, part forest. As the girl stepped into the light, the wind outside changed. The trees no longer growled, no longer moved with anger. The forest had accepted the trade, but something deeper had shifted too. The guardian turned to Mark one last time. "You have rewritten the balance. You have shown the forest something forgotten. Mercy." Mark looked up at the ceiling, the sunlight streaming in, and whispered to himself, "If this is the price for saving them, I accept it." And as the 2 alien girls reached the edge of the forest where the village waited, they looked back one last time, hoping to see Mark follow. But he was already part of something greater now, standing tall beside the guardian, silent, strong, and forever watching. And deep in the soil, the forest whispered his name, not with anger, but with respect. The forest no longer roared, but a strange silence fell across the land, a silence that felt heavy and thick, like it was holding its breath. Mark stood still inside the glowing cave, the red mark on his arm pulsing slowly like a second heartbeat. He felt dizzy, not from fear, but from something else, something growing inside him, something not human. The girls had reached the forest's edge, where the trees stopped moving and the village elders waited with wide eyes. They didn't run into their parents' arms, not yet. They kept looking back toward the trees, toward Mark, hoping, waiting, but he didn't come inside the forest. The guardian moved away, melting back into the shadows like a ghost. It said nothing more. It had what it wanted, Mark, and in return, the girls were free. But Mark didn't move either. His legs were shaking, not from weakness, but from change. The energy of the forest was inside him now, tying him to its roots, binding him to its heart. He reached up and touched the red symbol on his arm. It burned softly, not painful, but powerful. He could feel the emotions of the trees, the whispers of the soil, and the deep pain buried under every root. He understood. Now, this forest had been guarding a spark for so long. It had forgotten what it meant to feel anything else. It had forgotten compassion. Mark fell to one knee, breathing heavy. His body was still his own, but part of his mind was being filled with memories that weren't his, images of long-dead guardians, ancient civilizations, glowing stones, children taken long ago, their screams trapped in the bark of the trees. The forest had taken too many, and now it had him. But then something strange happened. The ground near Mark began to glow, not red, not green, but golden. Soft, warm light flowed from where the younger girl had laid moments ago. Mark looked up, confused. The golden light moved toward the forest walls like it was searching for something. It touched the roots, the ceiling, and finally Mark's body. The mark on his arm flickered, fighting the golden light. But it didn't burn. It didn't attack. Instead, it calmed him. The golden light was coming from the girls, or at least from the energy they had left behind. It was pure, not made from fear or sadness, but from love. That light began to spread. Outside the forest, the girls felt it. Too, they turned around, and the older one whispered, "He's hurting." He gave too much. Her sister nodded and ran toward the trees. The elders shouted, trying to stop them, but the girls did not slow down. They entered the forest again, even though it should have killed them. But the trees didn't move this time. The branches lifted, the roots stepped aside. The forest had changed. Mark heard footsteps behind him, light and fast. The girls rushed into the cave, tears on their faces. "We're not leaving you," the older one said. "Not again." Mark looked at them with wide eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice weak. "The deal. I took your place." The younger girl touched his hand. Her skin glowed golden, just like the light around them. "We're connected now," she whispered. "The forest doesn't need to hurt anymore," the guardian returned, not with rage, but with curiosity. Its glowing eyes flickered between Mark and the girls. "They carry more than spark," it said. "They carry balance. They carry change." Mark stood slowly, strength returning to his legs. The symbol on his arm changed, from red to gold, pulsing gently. "Then let me protect them. Not as a prisoner, but as a watcher." The guardian tilted its head. The walls around them began to shimmer, and the trees outside grew quiet and still. The forest didn't need to hold him anymore. It had accepted the new truth. The girls were not just energy, not just light. They were healing, and Mark was the key to protecting it. The cave slowly opened, revealing a soft path leading back to the village. The girls helped Mark walk, one on each side. Their touch was warm, stronger than any power the forest had. As they reached the edge, the elders dropped to their knees, speechless, watching Mark step out, not as a man, but as something more. He was still human, but touched by the forest, marked by ancient power, carrying the memories of 1,000 years. But his eyes were clear, and his voice was steady when he said, "They're safe, and the forest will never take again." The girls stood proudly beside him, not just rescued children, but symbols of a new bond, a new future. And deep inside the forest, the guardian watched from the shadows. Not as a hunter, but as a guardian reborn. The forest had changed, and so had the man who dared to walk through its heart. The balance was no longer built on fear, but on the courage of one human, and the light of two little girls who refused to let go. Mark stood at the forest's edge, his boots touching the grass of the alien village, but his heart still deep inside the woods. The two girls stood beside him, their small hands holding his fingers tightly. Around them, the villagers gathered, silent and wide-eyed. Some wept, others simply bowed. No one could believe he had returned alive. And with both children safe, the elders stepped forward, their robes glowing faintly under the sunlight. One of them whispered, "We prayed, but we did not expect this." Mark gave a tired smile. "Neither did I," he said softly. The girls didn't let go of his hands. Their bond was stronger than fear now, stronger than the forest. Behind him, the forest stood still and silent. No wind moved the leaves, no roots crawled across the ground. It was peaceful for the first time in memory. The trees didn't whisper, the soil didn't pulse. It was like the entire forest was holding its breath, listening, remembering, healing. The red mark on Mark's arm now glowed golden. A quiet warmth flowed from it, not painful, not cold, just alive. He could hear things now, not voices but feelings. The roots whispered with memories. The trees hummed with calm. The pain of the past had not disappeared, but it was no longer growing. It was resting. Because of him. The younger girl tugged at his sleeve. "Will you stay with us now?" she asked in a small voice. Mark looked at her, then at the village, then at the still forest, and he nodded. "I will, but I must also stay near the trees." The older girl stepped forward, her eyes bright. "The forest listens to you now," she said. "It doesn't hate anymore." Mark turned toward the elders. "The forest never hated," he said. "It was just broken, trapped in a duty it didn't understand anymore. It took because it thought it had to." The elder nodded. Slowly, "And now?" he asked. "Now it's learning," Mark replied. It felt something new, something it had forgotten: compassion. The villagers began to approach, carefully. They touched the girls' faces, crying softly, whispering thanks, one by one. They bowed to Mark, not as a soldier, not as a stranger, but as a protector, a symbol of something greater. They called him the balance bringer, and the man who spoke to trees. But Mark didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired, heavy with memories that weren't his, visions of ancient wars, of roots drinking blood, of children who never came back. The forest had shown him everything, and he had accepted it. A few days passed, and the forest remained calm. The villagers began walking closer to the trees, leaving flowers near the edge. Some even stepped a few feet inside without fear. The forest didn't react. It watched, it waited, but it no longer punished. Mark built a small home at the border, halfway between forest and village. The girls visited every day, sometimes bringing food, sometimes just stories. He taught them human things: how to make fire with stones, how to filter water, how to draw maps. They taught him their language, their games, their songs. At night, Mark sat outside, his feet in the soil, letting the forest speak through him. It showed him places no one had seen: glowing lakes hidden under mountains, ancient stone carvings under roots, stars that fell from the sky and planted themselves as trees. And sometimes it showed him sorrow faces of children it had taken long ago, trapped echoes that still haunted its oldest roots. Mark would place his hand on the ground and whisper, "You are forgiven." The forest would hum back softly, like a sleeping giant turning in its bed. But peace never stays forever. One evening, the sky turned red. A massive ship appeared above the horizon, metallic, cold, not from this planet. It hovered with silence, too quiet to trust. Mark stood, eyes narrowed, the golden mark on his arm Pulsing again, the forest groaned quietly, like it had sensed danger before anyone else. The girls ran to him, fear on their faces. "Who are they?" the older one asked. Mark didn't answer right away. He stared at the ship, remembering human technology, remembering what other species had done to forests, to children, to peace. He took a deep breath and said, "Maybe they're just explorers." But the forest whispered differently. Its roots shifted gently, and its voice crawled into Mark's thoughts. "They do not bring balance. They bring hunger." Mark stood tall, his body between the trees and the sky. "Then we will protect it again," he whispered. The girls stepped beside him, holding sticks like weapons, smiling bravely. The village gathered behind them, ready to defend the peace they had just begun to understand. Mark looked back at the trees one more time. "You trusted me once," he said. "Trust me again." And from deep within the earth, a soft golden glow rose into the sky, wrapping around the forest, around the people, around the protector who had once been a soldier, now something more. The war was not over, but this time, the forest would not face it alone, and the galaxy would learn what happens when you threaten a world protected by humans and by the very trees themselves.